Hey everyone, welcome back to Shattering Ceilings. It's Lauren.
And Megan. And today we are going to have just a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren and I always get on and have these great conversations, and then we hit record and we're like, well, shit. Now we have to repeat everything that we just talked about. So today we're
Right.
just going to raw dog it, for lack of a
Yeah,
better
let's see how
term,
that goes.
and see how it goes. And the
Yeah.
topic today is something that's been on my mind a lot lately.
Mm,
Um, because I was feeling like I was lacking in certain areas, but the topic is pressure, like
mm-hmm.
feeling pressure and letting that be the driver to how you're making your decisions.
Oof. I don't know if that's a good driver to make decisions.
I don't think it is. That's just why I wanted to bring it up. Like,
Yeah. And there's all
I mean,
kinds of
this,
pressure, right? There's societal
yeah,
pressure, there's familial pressure, there's your own pressure you put on yourself.
personal. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, the big thing right now is like it's this pressure to need to grow and expand and all,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not doing enough
There's that
to
thing enough.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. The thing that struck me the most about it is like I feel like in the last 5 years there's been this
Mm-hmm.
huge shift out of hustle culture. And everybody's like,
Right.
"Oh, we're not hustling anymore, like we're setting boundaries, we're doing this." But then now there's this new wave of like coaches. And this is
Mm-hmm.
coming from two women that, have a personal growth podcast and
Right.
eventually want to go into coaching.
Right. And I currently
Um
am kind of in the coaching
yeah,
space. Hmm.
right. Um but there's a lot of marketing that's going on that's like, oh,
Right.
if you're not always investing in a coach, if you are not always a part of a program or a mentorship or
Hmm.
plugged in all the time, then you are not doing enough and you're never going to get to your goals.
Hmm.
But what's come up for me is all the things that I am sacrificing
Hmm.
in trying to make the space and time to do all of that personal growth. Like
Hmm.
life, I'm sacrificing life.
Mm.
It's time with my family, time with my children, time to actually relax and recuperate.
Hmm. Which
Um,
is super important. And that is something
yeah.
that we had to learn the hard way at times, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning. I'm
Same.
still learning. I
Same.
felt so much pressure to sign. Lauren and I finished a coaching container in March that was a 9-month container, I think, or 7-month container. It was a
7 month
long
container.
time.
Yeah, it was long.
And we were committed to that. And like at the end, it started getting more difficult for me to show up to the actual like live coaching calls because my life was calling so much of me. But then we finished it.
Hmm.
And, I hear like, oh, you need to be investing, da 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 da.
Hmm.
Um, and I've been looking for more. You and I talked about it today. There's a great coaching container that's starting with someone that we both want to work with.
Yeah.
And the question that we asked, like we're talking about before we popped on here, is like, do we actually have the bandwidth to even take in and
Right.
really digest and then be able to utilize what we would be using in that coaching container? Or is it going to go into that bank of information that we have
Right.
available to us, but don't actually have the space or capacity to utilize?
Right. And I think that's where I'm at right now because I know that it would be a really great opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
I do have other things going on in my life where I'm like, the priority really needs to be over here right now. And even though,
Yeah.
yes, that is a priority and it's definitely one for the future, like I don't know if I can do all of that right now. And I think that in the past, I was actually just talking with someone who's a Gemini manifester this morning, and she was saying the same thing, like, you know, she's like, "I'm always just, like, putting so much on myself." And I find that
Mm-hmm.
although I've taken a lot off of myself, I still overcommit at times and say yes and feel pressure to do things because either A, it is a good opportunity, or B, I feel like I should be doing something,
Mm-hmm.
or I should be, working, towards this or that. And, um, yeah, like what you were saying earlier, like, are we missing out on life because we're always on, like, keeping our eye on, like, the next thing, the next opportunity, the next this, the next that, and I think, like, instead of just being with ourselves sometimes or letting, growth happen organically, like, I love this analogy too, like, you're not a potato, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
not just gonna grow organically, which is true to a certain extent,
But
but
it's
there are
not.
things, right, there are things in
We are,
life.
first of all, we are organic.
Mhm,
Life happens organically. And before there's this world of coaching and
mhm,
commercialism or consumerism, like people grew, and a lot of how you grew is through experience, and if we're not giving us our
Mhm.
space to actually have experiences in
Right.
life, then we're
Mhm.
missing out on those organic opportunities to grow because
Mhm.
we are trying to program it into our life.
Yes, and on the flip side of that coin though, Meg, I think you and I are, the smaller percentage that are doing things to grow organically in a sense, or having those experiences. Because I think that there are, like, a lot of people too that fall into the bucket of the mundane life is coming and it's the same thing over and over and over, and, they're not really doing much to facilitate growth or have experiences to facilitate growth. So I do think there is a happy medium that we need to find, but also agree that it has to come out of your own discernment, it has to come out of a space where you truly decide when it's right for you or what's right for you. Not saying that there's gonna be times where, you know, it may feel scary, because I think oftentimes, I mean, I remember when we jumped into that one container and we were like, "Oh shit, like, this is the most we've ever invested," and it was fucking scary, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, being scared was okay in that moment, because we knew that, yes, this is scary because it's a lot more than we've ever used to. It's completely different than we've ever experienced, and we learned so much over that time because we did dive into something that was just so different. Um, so there are gonna be times where it is gonna feel scary and unnatural in a sense, but we still, it's a good idea to do it, right?
Yeah,
But
I mean, the fear is not the issue, it's that pressure around, like,
right.
what is driving that decision? Is it
Mhm.
because your intuition, right? We talk about energetics, that's a
Mhm.
huge conversation now, is, like, listening to your
Yes.
intuition.
Right. Meg's
What
like,
is
"What's
it
your gut
driven by the
say?"
intuition? Or is it
Sleep
driven
on
by that
it.
pressure? Yeah. Well, like,
Right.
and something that I keep thinking about too is, like, um, worth shouldn't be based on your performance, right? But
No.
everything that's marketed to us is performance based. Oh, you want to live this lifestyle, you want to have this shiny thing. Well, these are the things that you have to do. This is who you have to pay. This is how you're going to get there.
Mhm.
Fuck that shit. Everybody
Mhm.
gets there in their own way. And a lot of
Mhm.
times the people who are telling you that, like, their route doesn't look as clean. It's like the Instagram of the coaching world.
It's a
You see
highlight
what
reel.
people want to
Mhm.
write.
Mhm.
You see what people wanna share, but they don't necessarily share all their story, even when they are saying they're being vulnerable and stuff, and this is not to hate on people. I just have been noticing a lot lately how much pressure is coming into the conversation. It's
Mhm.
still sales, and it's still not necessarily what is in the best interest for you. You are the only one that knows that. So
Mhm.
what is driving your decisions?
Mhm.
You move through life letting pressure be the guide.
Mhm.
And, like, to go back to, like, that our coaching container that we went through, yeah, I learned a lot in that coaching container. There are some skills and things that I did not know before that I'm so excited to have now.
Mhm.
Um, but some of what I learned was not actually what was happening in the container, but what I was learning about myself outside of
Mhm.
the container,
Agreed.
going through that process, making that huge investment in myself.
And that's another thing, actually. Like, I was just away on an incentive trip for my company that I have, and we me and another, leader at a similar level, we were talking about how, we face pressure sometimes of having to conform to certain techniques or ideas, systems, just different things, right?
Mhm.
And she was talking about how, like, at the moment, she really didn't have a mentor or whatever. And I said, "You know what, though?" I said, "I feel like over the last 3 years, I've really, kind of not stepped away, but stepped on my own in a sense, and really started to discover who and what I want to do in my own business." And
Mhm.
it was really during those 3 years that, like, I think I really expanded so much because I had to figure it out on my own. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I think we feel pressured to be a certain way or to follow a certain person or a certain coach, whatever it may be, a certain ideology, whatever. And I think that's where you can also get lost, and
Yeah.
kind of lose yourself in a sense. And you kind of have to come back and figure out on your own what you want your life, what you want your business, what your relationship, whatever it may, what do you want it to look like? without like having a model there for you all the time, you know? Because I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing. Like we see, I mean, social media is it's in our faces every single day. Unless you
Yeah.
don't have any social media, which I highly doubt because you probably found this podcast on social media, right? You know, like it's in your face every day. And whether we realize it or not, like it really is helping us to form our opinions on what we like, what we don't like, what we want, what we don't want, you know, and sometimes it's great because it does give us like, oh, she's doing this and I would love to do that someday. Like it does give you a lot of positive things too. But then there's
Mhm.
also like Meg saying that highlight reel where we can kind of like get stuck in that thought that this is real life and it's not, you know,
Well, and
it's
it's not everybody's life either. Look,
right.
when you're so infiltrated in other people's opinions, other people's lifestyles, other people's whatever, it's
Mhm.
hard to be able to get clear on what is actually for you. And so
Mhm.
that like leads me to the next thing, right? Is this space when we are constantly, and I think we've said this on the show before. So this may be a little contradictory to what we've been talking about, but I've been giving this a lot of thought and I'm moving towards the line of thought that, well, yes, it's important to be plugged in. Yes, it's
Mhm.
important to have a morning routine, like have routine in general. We know that
Yeah.
routine in life,
Oh,
is going to help you succeed,
yes.
but
I was
it
off
doesn't
routine last week and I was like,
necessarily,
oh.
it fucks you up.
Yeah, it does.
But it doesn't necessarily need to take up every spacious moment in your day. We also
Right.
need space to just exist and live and think freely. So, like, if every time you're in the car, every time you're in the shower, every time you have a quiet moment, if you're listening to a podcast or reading, what space are you actually leaving yourself to form your own opinion?
Mhm.
You know, what space are you leaving yourself to actually just be in an experience and
Mhm.
learn what you're supposed to learn from that experience
Like
without that
digest it.
head chatter?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's
Mhm.
so much chatter all the time because there's no way to let go
Mhm.
really of all of that external stuff that you're bringing in all the time, other people's opinions and perspectives. And while, yes, they are useful,
Mhm.
just like everything else, it's useful in small doses.
Mhm.
Anything to an extreme is going to have negative side effects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is my question too is what is guiding you, right, in your
Mhm.
decision making? And what space are you leaving yourself to just actually experience life?
Right.
Because that organic growth is happening in the quiet moments. That organic growth is happening when you're spending time with your family, right?
Mhm.
Not because, oh, it's 10:30 on a Saturday afternoon, it's family time now. I've scheduled it into my, life. Like, no, because you just actually allow yourself the space to be. When
Mhm.
was the last time you cleared your calendar and just took a day to exist and to be, like, with without anything, with
Mhm.
no plans, with no direction, with no reason for doing that thing except for that you are a fucking human that has every right to rest and just exist in the world with
Well,
no
you
pressure.
and you may have to plan that in though.
Sometimes we do,
You
yes,
have
but,
to
like, if
plan in that time to do nothing because with depending on where you're at in life, like I know I have 2 kids that are in activities, my husband has his businesses and I have mine. Like yesterday, I definitely planned that, you know what I mean? Like yesterday, I went on a 10-mile hike. We went and got lunch and drinks after. I knew my time block was that block where I knew I was gonna be gone for a majority of the day, and I was unplugged, but I was around other people for sure, but
which
during
is
those mo
fine.
well, I was gonna say, during that time, I'm having all these different conversations with all these different people that were not planned and had no, like,
Mhm.
agenda or anything like that, and so it's like, I got to learn a lot of different things and hear different things, and I did experience growth yesterday, and I also experienced, like, the gratitude of just being outside, just doing something cool, walking through the
Right,
woods.
no cell phone, like, were you on Instagram while you were out there?
I mean, I did post some pictures, yeah, I mean
Okay, so
come
think about
on,
that.
I posted some
But then
stories.
let's think about that, not to call you out, but, like, did
Yeah.
you actually unplug?
I
You
mean,
didn't. You
yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
Like, hate to be a bitch in this situation, but you didn't
Mm,
because you were taking pictures.
I was taking
You
pictures. Mhm.
There was still an underlying agenda. There was
Well,
not like,
capturing the
when was the
moment
last
for
time
me
you
is
just
cool.
didn't take. Yeah, but sometimes we have to just be in the moment,
Mm. Well, it was like 4 hours of being in the woods, so I feel like I got quite a
which
bit
feels crazy,
of
right?
movement
4
in.
hours, but, like, think about
Yeah.
time before technology and the way that we have it nowadays, like, when you
Mhm.
couldn't just be posting on your cell phone. If you went on a 4-hour hike, you went on a hike.
Yeah.
You were
It's
connecting with
true.
nature. Like, were you noticing the birds? Were you noticing the bugs? Were you noticing,
Mm-hmm.
the different plants that were surrounding you? Were you feeling the breeze hitting your face without
Sure.
the thought of having to post about it or have it, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
just, when was the last time you fully unplugged? That was a partial. I'll give you a partial for that.
Yeah, I feel like I deserve a partial.
You totally deserve a partial, but like, look, I'm not saying this is like, a queen on her throne that does this all the time, because I don't. And that's part of why this conversation started, is because I need to unplug more.
Mm-hmm.
But
But you're constantly being, again, you're being texted, you're being called, you're being summoned in some kind of way, shape, or form
and that's why we have
all
do not
the
disturb on our
time.
phones.
Yeah. I mean, I need to use that feature more. I know you use that feature. Yeah.
I've got it on now.
Do you?
But yeah, I get in
Yeah, yeah.
trouble sometimes because I put it on at night and I'll forget to undo it, and then like 11 o'clock rolls around, and finally I look down and Aaron's like, "Are you fucking alive?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, sorry, forgot to take it off do not disturb this morning." But those
Yeah.
are the moments when I have the deepest contemplation, and
Yeah.
without even realizing it. It's an accident that I've left my
Mm-hmm.
phone on do not disturb, but like,
Mm-hmm.
those are the mornings where I get the most accomplished. They're the
Mm-hmm.
mornings where I actually have time to take space to meditate and be still for a little while, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, every 5, 10, 20 minutes hopping on Instagram to just scroll through my newsfeed.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm intentional about putting my phone away or like putting it somewhere, you know what I mean, where I'm not hopping on. And that's something too. Like I definitely want to get more intentional with taking more like breaks off of social. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm also I also do like to take pictures though.
I
So
know. And
I'm
like, there's that
guilty.
pressure to post. I get all that, but like, and I mean, I'm the opposite. I have so many pictures that never post. I'm sure
Yeah.
my employees probably hate me because they send me pictures every single week of what they're doing in the kitchen, and I'm like, "I'm going to post it." And they get edited and
Yeah.
then they never get posted.
Yeah.
But to go back to pressure.
Yeah.
Right. There's so much pressure in every aspect of our life. Pressure
Mhm.
in parenting, pressure in career, pressure in
Mhm.
partnership,
Mhm.
right? Pressure in growth.
Mhm.
Can we let go of some of that and just give ourselves the space to just fucking be humans for a little while? Like, we're so disconnected from nature at this point, and
Right.
like,
And it's like, how do we do that, right? And I don't know if I have a clear cut answer other than it has to be, I feel like, a conversation in a sense with
mm,
yourself,
mm,
sometimes, or someone speaking life for you. Like I know my friend Lauren told me too. She's like, Lauren, you're on vacation. You earn this vacation. So
mhm.
like just stop worrying about everything that's happening at home or work. I'm like, you know what? You're right. But I had it like I needed someone to almost like justify it for me, right? Because in
Yeah,
my head, my wheels are spinning and spinning, and I'm putting all this pressure on myself. I needed someone to actually call me out on it and say, "What are you doing? You earned this." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I did. You're right.
like,
I
oh,
need to
I can
be
take a
here.
break.
I can take a break. I can be here right
Yeah,
now." You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's just of course, it's going to be different depending on you, like your personality, who you are, obviously what your goals are. You know what I mean? There's going to be people that do feel more pressure to do certain things because of where they are in their career or their life.
mhm.
Um, but I also think that it's important to, like you said, Meg, really think about where you want to be and what you want, and not be doing things because you see other people doing things or
Right,
feel
and you
like you
think that
have to
that's the
do
way it should be
things.
done.
You feel like you have to go back to school because your friend is or your family thinks you should or whatever it is
Right,
you know
every successful person has this level of degree, so you feel like you need to do the same thing.
mhm
Um, yeah. So something that I when I'm guiding people in meditation,
mhm
something that often is like the basis of that meditation is just letting go of the burden that you bear in life for a
mhm
moment, because
mhm
we often carry that weight, right?
mhm
The pressure to succeed and perform, and mom and whatever, like all the roles that you play in your life.
mhm
You can't do anything about it in every moment of every day, right? Like,
no.
so can you let it go for a few minutes?
And where's it coming from? Like, again, I think and we've talked about this before too, like, is it coming from because we care what everyone else thinks about that
Right,
status? Or
right,
if you're like Pinterest mom.
right.
I
I mean,
gave up
even
that a long
internal
time ago.
pressure. Oh my God, you're way better than I am. That
Ooh,
was one of
I
the
don't know.
first things that I thought when I met you. I'm like, oh my God, the parties are always great. There's,
Oh, well,
you
I love
guys are,
parties
the
though.
pictures,
It's
I
not the
know.
Pinterest. It's like I love parties.
You're like, let me host you and feed
Let
you
me
and get you
host.
drunk.
Yeah. That's yeah. If I could do that for, all the rest of my life, that'd be cool. No pressure there.
I'd show up to those parties. But yeah, so like whether it's coming externally, right? Like you
Hmm.
want that recognition from other people or feeling the
Right.
pressure from other people or that internal pressure that you need to look a certain way because that's what
Right.
the right way is.
Right, but why?
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 Right.
Hmm.
Why?
Really think about that. Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like I have this pressure? Why do I feel like I have
Mm-hmm.
to make this decision? Peel
Yeah.
back the layers. I think peeling back the layers is such a good one. And my God, I remember one time I did this exercise and, you know, just asking why, why. And then
Mm-hmm.
you get to it and it's so it's usually a limiting belief. It's usually maybe even the past little T, big T trauma, whatever. Um, for why you feel like you have to, like Mike said, perform or you have to look a certain
Mm-hmm.
way or you have to do a certain thing.
Right.
And it usually is, which we had a conversation about worth. It usually comes back to your worth, right? And we
I
have to.
just had to do this with myself the other
Did
day,
you?
Lauren. I
Yeah.
did. Yeah. So we're buying this house
Mm-hmm.
and like we looked at houses all over the place in varying degrees of like renovation. Some houses were completely renovated and beautiful and some were kind of in between, but we could live in and not do anything for a couple years and I'd be fine. But the house that we landed on,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I'm so excited about and I love, but it literally checked off none of the boxes as far as like being remodeled.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2-story. I thought we'd move into a 1-story. So all of this stuff was starting to creep up. Like I was feeling this pressure. It's Aaron and my first time buying a house on our own. So this idea that like for me to be able to entertain and fully enjoy my
Mm.
house in the way that I want to, that it had to look a certain way. And for me, that meant redoing all the floors, redoing the kitchen. Like the fucking Google Doc list of upgrades that
Listen.
I had made for myself. And then it was really stressing over like,
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to get all this done in the next 3 months? Because I want it done by the end of summer so that
Right.
in the fall, when, holidays come,
Mm-hmm.
we can entertain. And then I started to peel back those layers. I'm like, well, wait, so why do I need this to be done? Why do I need,
Mm-hmm.
and at first it was like going through all the different renovation stuff that I wanted to do
Sure.
and thinking about the financial stress that it would be putting on us to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Like
Right. More pressure.
more fucking pressure. And then
Right.
it finally got to the point that like, if my house doesn't look picture perfect,
Mm-hmm.
like some of my friends' houses here, some of my family members, um, then my house isn't good enough. Like I
Mm.
can't share my space because it
Right.
doesn't look the way that I feel like it needs to look to be able to welcome people into it. And it's pressure, right?
And I'm gonna say this because I know this because I know people and where I lived, even with my parents. You can buy a brand new house, everything is brand new, and people are still going to want to do their own thing to it or change things because they either want to put their touch on it or it's not
Mm-hmm.
up to par, quote unquote, on their standards or, whatever. And so, like, again, I think it just goes back to our desires and just feeling like things need to be revamped for whatever reason. And listen, I've been in my house for 5 years. There's still a Google Doc list of things that I would love to do to it. And I still entertain and host because it's not about what your house looks like. It's about the people that are
Right.
going to come visit and
Right.
the warmth that you're going to bring to the party, which I know you will. So,
Yeah. And it's so silly, but like it's interesting too, and I want to bring this up because maybe somebody else has this experience.
mm-hmm,
When we first put the offer in on the house,
mm-hmm,
that's where my mind was. Like, I
mm-hmm.
don't have, we can do this over the next couple of years. It's part of why we ended up in the house that we did. Cause I can see, like, as soon as we walked in there, I could see everything. Like,
Yeah,
I know what I'm doing. And it's like, this feels like home.
right. Which is
And
awesome.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't look like home yet, but it
Well,
feels like home.
mm-hmm,
And so I was good. I was like, okay, we'll do this first. And then
mm-hmm,
once we pay that off, then we'll do this. And like, we'll work. It'll give us fun projects to do over the next few years. But then
right.
when we committed to it, that stuff started creeping in. I went to a couple birthday parties, you know, like went to people.
No.
I'm like, oh my
You're
God, your
looking
house is
around,
fucking
you're
beautiful.
comparing, right? So that's,
Exactly
again,
that.
comparison is
Feeling
the
less
thief
than.
of joy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it truly is, right?
Mm-hmm. And the pressure sets in. So sometimes we can make a decision from that place, right? But then afterwards, that pressure
You're
still kicks in.
questioning yourself, doubting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what pressure are we putting on ourselves? You know, like it's why? Why are we
Right.
doing it?
Right. Right.
How is it serving you in moving to where you want to be in life? How much of your bandwidth are
Yeah.
you
Cause
wasting on the pressure?
there can be good pressure, right? There can be good pressure. And then
Sure.
there's a lot of times not good pressure.
Yeah, sure. Look, there's always going to be pressure. We're always going to
Yeah.
have deadlines at work
Sure.
or,
I
whatever. You have to have certain things done in a
I
timely
remember
manner.
college. Like they made this cutoff. Like, if you don't graduate by this time, you're not getting this extra certificate. And like, I was like, oh my God, I have all these classes left. So then I started doing 6 classes a semester, double intercession or winter intercession, summer
Mm-hmm.
classes, 2 semesters. And I did get it done. So that was good pressure because I was lottie-dallying, I guess, through college a little bit. Like a lot of people probably do, but
Yeah. And I did
I
the
got it
same
done.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, mine was different, but I thought that I had to be taking 18 hours, working 2 jobs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I had put so much pressure on myself that I actually didn't perform as well. My grades weren't as great in those classes because I was so stretched.
Mm-hmm.
And also
That's what
still trying to
happens.
be a college student and go out and have fun and all those other things.
And that's
Right.
something to think about, right? Like that's exactly what we were talking about the container that we were thinking about joining is like, okay, yeah, we could probably make it work. How's everything else going to look around it? How are we going to
Right.
perform in that container? How are we going to perform in our lives, our relationships, our jobs, you know?
Right. What is the actual, and maybe that's something to start thinking about when you are
Yeah,
feeling
what's the
that pressure. Like,
quality? Mm-hmm.
yeah. And what stress are you going to add to your life just to
Right.
succumb to that pressure?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because I was just talking about cortisol yesterday, with someone that I'm coaching, and that's something that we don't often think about, like how much is stress affecting our health, the
So much.
quality of our
So
health,
much.
of our
Yeah.
lives, you know what I mean? And because it's not something you can see, right? You can feel it surely, but like even on a normal day, like I would love to see my measurements throughout the day of my cortisol levels like rising and falling to see
Yeah.
really what kind of like sets it off,
I'm
in a
so glad
sense.
you brought that up because that makes me think about like, so inflammation. I
Hmm.
feel like we just talked about this on this podcast, but
Well, I think you talked about it with me, right? When it came to, I think you said to me something about like even with my workouts, right? Like there was some research about,
mm, oh yeah, doing like really hardcore workouts all the
yeah.
time can spike your cortisol because your
Mm-hmm.
body's under a state of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Like your brain doesn't know the difference between you running a marathon and you getting chased by a fucking tiger,
Right.
you know?
Not running marathons,
But
so. Yeah.
random example that I would
Yeah.
never be able to accomplish.
No.
No desire there, no pressure.
No desire, no
Um,
pressure at all. Mm-mm.
but the low level inflammation is going to exist in your body if you're like constantly in a state of stress. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you might see those things flaring up, right? Like if you have arthritis or another inflammatory related disease,
Mm-hmm.
you will notice flare ups when you're feeling more stressed. And it's because when we feel stressed, when, like our body's going to react to that. And inflammation is one of those reactions. So, like for me recently, I've been feeling so old. And it's inflammation in my body.
Um,
Like I get up and down, I'm on the ground and off the ground all day long at work. I teach yoga to kids. Um, the number of times that I've like had to roll myself off the ground in the last 3 weeks grunting because
oh
my
man.
knee feels like stiff and locked up and it's inflammation in my knee because
Right.
I'm so fucking stressed about everything
Mm-hmm.
that like it finally just hit me last week. I'm like, I got out of the car and was sitting like crisscross applesauce in the car. It was a 10-minute car ride and I got out and I was like limping into the house because
Mm.
my knee had to warm up for a second, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 30. Is anything in my life that I'm stressed about worth the discomfort that I'm currently feeling and the long-term effects of living in this space?
I think that's a good question for everything.
Yeah.
It's a good question for anything that's stressing you or putting pressure on you in your
Mm-hmm.
life. It's like, is it worth it? Because like we have to live out this life, and I hope really, really well, and I hope we really have it. Obviously, we're gonna have the good times, the bad times, the in-between times. But it's like looking back on life, you know, you're not going to be like, oh man, I really should have put more pressure on myself to get this done,
Right.
or by this time in my
Right.
life, or my house wasn't, picture perfect for that birthday party. You know what I mean? It's going to be
Yeah.
about the experiences that you had and the people that you spent your time with. And sure, I think there's going to be, you hear this a lot too. Like people, it's not so much what they, did, but what they didn't do. So I can see,
Mm.
that pressure too of like FOMO. FOMO's a real thing,
Sure.
right?
We
That's
only
a
live
pressure.
once,
Right.
at
That's a
least in this
pressure that a
body.
lot of us, and I know that I can feel at times. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think about that too. Like, is it worth it? Is the pressure or the stress worth the quality of my life?
Right. Think about the sacrifices you're making in the process. Is it
Mhm.
worth, like, not to get a little morbid, but like, is it worth potentially shortening your life
Mhm.
because you're not taking care of yourself health wise
Mhm.
to attain these goals and hit these markers and,
Mhm.
whatever, have the beautiful house, have the fancy job? Like,
Mhm.
if it is, that's fine. But know that that's a sacrifice that you might be making.
Right. And listen, like, I feel like, you know, we do talk a lot about goal setting and we do talk a
Hmm.
lot about going for things full out. And we're about that. I think that we're both about that life.
Mm,
I also think that we understand now as we're getting older too, that balance that needs to be there, that it
right.
can't always be 100 miles an hour.
Right. You got to know when to pull back. You got to
Yeah.
know when to recalibrate.
Right.
And hold on, pause, stay. Okay, we're back. So you have to know when to recalibrate, right?
Mhm.
That's where we were
Right.
at. And part of success, part of living, balance, whatever that looks like,
Right.
is being able to reprioritize when things take more priority. If your health is suffering, then maybe, we chill out a little bit on the goals until we take care of the health, and
Yeah.
then find a way
That
to
should be a goal.
coexist all of those things. Yeah, like all things together in coexistence, I think would be the ultimate goal, where you're
Yeah.
showing up for yourself, you're showing up for your family and friends, and, like, able to be present in your relationships. You feel like you're having success to some degree in your
Right.
business or career. Like,
I think that's a true definition of balance though, right? Is that
mm,
when everything that is important in your life can take priority when it
when it needs
needs
to.
to.
Yeah.
Like that's true balance because you're not going to be able to do it all at the same time. But I
No.
think understanding that is part of that's the key, is understanding that. Not putting your pressure or putting the pressure on yourself to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
You
And it's not
can't.
easy.
It's not
Easier said
easy.
than done.
We're all still learning this. Me and Meg are still
Hmm.
obviously figuring it out, but
Yeah.
uh
It's a conversation for a reason.
yeah, exactly. So,
So for this week, guys, think about where pressure is guiding your decision making.
mhm.
Think about how you're showing up in different places in your life, and are you happy with how it's going? Is it
Mhm.
time to reprioritize? Is there a place that you can let the pressure off a little bit to better
Mhm.
take care of yourself and to live a more rich and, like, love, joy filled life,
Mhm.
regardless
Right.
of the the silly stuff like fancy houses and vacations and, just living and
Mhm.
being happy in the moments, whether it's at the grocery store or in your living room, or I don't know, at the W, fancy hotel doing your thing. Can you find the joy in all of those things? Can you let go of the pressure to perform?
Yeah.
That's all we got
All
for
right.
you guys.
All right, guys. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.